And I think we're live. We always have a little bit of kerfuffle, don't we? Because sometimes it gives you a countdown from 5, and sometimes it's just like, woo, in
You're
we
in.
go.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to our live recording of the 6 to 7 Figure Women podcast this evening. Our theme for today is making better leadership and wealth decisions with human design and the Enneagram. And we are joined by the wonderful Candy Barone and Kaitlyn Carlson. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you for having us. I'm so excited for this.
Yes, thank you. I'm so honored to be here and excited to play in this conversation. So thank you.
Now, before we jump in completely, Candy and Kaitlyn, do you want to just take a moment to introduce yourselves for our watchers live and our listeners on the podcast? Tell us what you do and tell us where you are in the world, please, if that's agreeable.
You want to go first, Candy?
I was just going to say the same thing, but sure. I am Candy Barone. I am CEO and founder of a company called You Empowered Strong. I do a lot of work with helping people say yes to themselves in some pretty big capacities. Most of what I do is around leadership development. So I work with everyone from executives to entrepreneurs who are trying to grow cultures, communities, and change in their own backyard. And so it's a one-to-many model. And it's all about redefining and elevating the conversation around leadership and our responsibility in that space. I believe leadership is a choice and it is everyone's responsibility. And it starts with how we lead ourselves first.
Love it. We are feeling that, Candy.
Hi, everyone. I'm based out of Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm the founder of Theory Planning Partners, which is a boutique wealth creation firm built exclusively for female entrepreneurs. And that was based on my experience in private wealth management. I did not come across any female clients while I was in private wealth management, and I felt that the traditional private wealth model did not serve business owners very well. So we have an innovative model where we bring the private wealth service and strategy to small business owners that otherwise were neglected by the traditional model. And we are all about empowering women and teaching them how to create wealth rather than expecting them to come to us with it. So I love what I do. I can't wait to dive into we make all of our clients take the Enneagram during the discovery process. So I have some good Enneagram data on this demographic.
Beautiful. I think it would be great to just give a little overview too. Kaitlyn, if you want to give an overview of the Enneagram then, and Candy of human design, just real short snippet, and maybe how that translates through wealth and how that translates through leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start. So the Enneagram was introduced to me actually through my mom, and we started using it for my family. We were going through a pretty tough time as a family, just really looking at our relationship with alcohol and our family history of alcoholism, and really how we wanted to break that generational dysfunction, So that's where I first learned about the Enneagram. And my brother, sister, mom, and dad and I are all 5 different Enneagram numbers. And it was really groundbreaking for us to realize that we all view the world completely differently. And also someone once said that the Enneagram makes you more forgiving. And I think that's really true, because I remember taking it for the first time and being like, who would answer this like this? And there are people that answer the question that way. And, when you start to realize like, wow, everyone's looking at the world through a different lens, it can just be so helpful. And so because it was so transformational for my family, I thought it would be great to bring it into the professional context and also provide a deeper basis. I mean, we're always talking about finances and people's money, but that's like one of the emotional things in their lives. So to have the Enneagram as a backdrop for those conversations has been hugely helpful. And for those who aren't familiar with it, so there are 9 numbers total. You have a little bit of every number in you, but you have a primary number and you are the same number your whole life. So you are born that number. It gets at your subconscious motivation and really like your sense of worthiness and like what motivates you and what makes you feel worthy. And each number has 2 wings, but you tend to lean more towards one wing than another. And so I'm an Enneagram 3. And so my wings are 2 and 4. And I'm a 3 that leans towards my 2 wing. So what that means is that I'm an achiever. So no surprise that I'm an entrepreneur. And I lean towards my 2 wing, which is the helper. So very social, makes a lot of sense that I'm trying to teach women how to create wealth. It's really about guiding their well-being over the course of their lives. And we have long-term relationships. And that is just like so spot on for a 3 wing too. And so I have, I have all these numbers in me, but that really is my primary number. And we can talk about this in a little bit, but when I'm in a healthy and growth place, then I go towards another number. And when I'm not in a healthy place, when I'm in a place of stress, then I go towards another number. So it's amazing because you are one number, but like they're all connected, and it's kind of uncanny how accurate it can be.
Love it. Thank you for that kick-ass synopsis, Kaitlyn. That was awesome. So powerful.
Thanks.
Candy.
Yeah, so I love it. I actually love Enneagram, and I do a lot of work in human design and then even the extraction around gene keys. And what was interesting is I had a client bring it to me in a mastermind I was running, 5 years ago now, where she was a pure manifester. And she's like, so here's a human design. And I was like, yeah, no, it's a little woo-woo. It's a little, I still was fighting with 20 years of corporate and some of the constructs that I was in. And it's interesting because as the true manifester that she is, she planted the seed, and it was a rabbit hole that sort of was like, there's something about this I want to lean into. And it's been what I call the rabbit hopping adventure for me over the last 5 years. I've gone in periods where I've gone really deep, and I've had to bring myself back out. But what was interesting is as soon as that hit, and she brought that to my attention, there was something about it I couldn't stop myself from. And so I started to dig in really deep, and I started to bring in conversations with my one-on-one clients. Fast forward 5 years, and it is every aspect of my business that I have brought human design. In fact, I do not work with a one-on-one client where we don't look at their human design as part of the conversation. So I do a lot of strategy work with clients. I do a lot of helping them get aligned, like I said. And what's interesting is I have done every assessment under the sun. I mean, literally every assessment under the sun. And there's always been pieces of those assessments that have been missing for me. And so when human design came to and I started to really dig in, I realized it was the most comprehensive way to look at my energetic blueprint and my DNA wiring. And so what's interesting is I even have taken my Enneagram and I just did Strength Finders again for the 3rd time. And yesterday I can map out where those other assessments fall in my human design. And so when I look at I'm an 8 with a wing 7 in Enneagram, I can actually see exactly when that 8 is lit up and when I'm in the true essence of who I am, and I can align it back to my map. And so what I liked about human design that I think was the thing that was the missing piece for me for a really long time is as a 6/2 emotional manifesting generator, I don't fit a mold at all. I am a complete unicorn when it comes to how fast I move, the fact that I don't fit a box, the fact that I'm not here to play by rules. I'm a disruptor and a change catalyst by nature, yet I've always felt like people have should, and I've should all over myself to be like, you're to this or you're not enough this. Human design for me, when I got into it, was the first time I had a tool or a resource that gave me permission to just be me. And what I love about human design is because a lot of people I think get tripped up in, oh, human design is this thing that says this is who I am and it's another box. And I'm like, human design is not a box. Human design is actually this wonderful dynamic space. And it's like a GPS that keeps navigating you deeper down into the nuances of who you are when you're ready to explore that. And so I love the fact that it gives us a space to be really wide-eyed, innocent, and curious. As a coach of mine used to say, like the cosmic 3-year-old on the adventure. And we get to contemplate what that energetic blueprint means for us at any given point. It's not, this is who you are. It's, this is what alignment looks like for you as you're moving into this next iteration of who you are. This is what alignment might feel like or resonate for you in that space. And what I loved about it is, if you've ever seen the movie Soul with Jamie Foxx, the Pixar, I like to say human design is basically Soul. It is where he decides he wants to be a musician. Then there's this whole period where the portal has to open up and he has to come through a certain way and live it. That's your human design. And you can map out all of your purpose, your incarnation card, like what you're here to do. And what I love about it since studying it is it has given me a clear path to help my leaders that I work with understand their leadership language, understand their unique gifts as a leader. I look at human design, the way I like to express it to my clients is human design is a way to map out your unique leadership love language. And when you understand how to activate that, you become the leader you were meant to be, activating the gifts that are unique to you. And I've watched what's happened with the leaders and their teams, because we do it across their whole organization. And it's just been really fascinating when you realize, to your point, Kaitlyn, we're not all wired the same way. We don't all think the same way. We don't all communicate. We don't have access to the same energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can understand, oh, no wonder why you do it that way, there's just a whole lot of freedom and permission that we're able to give ourselves and give each other. And I just think it's one of the best forms of compassion and empathy we can step into.
Totally. Love that. Jess, what has human design and what is knowing your human design and your Enneagram helped you do in your business and in your journey from 6 to 7 figures?
Well, I'm laughing because I had tantrums on discovering both of my results. Because, Enneagram, I'm a 4. And like, how 4 is it to not like the fact that you're a 4?
It's basically like a signature 4.
Whenever I say that, everyone just laughs. They're like, you're such a 4. I'm like, okay. But actually, Kaitlyn, what you were sharing about the levels of Enneagram and like what it looks like to be high fulfillment and low fulfillment, I was like, well, that explains my entire life and my breakdown and my personal growth. And I don't know, I think it was a really satisfying thing. And I think for me as well, I also had a moment of clarity with Enneagram, because it's kind of like, I'm not a sad person. But then I noticed actually as I was doing music, I was like, but I do like sad music and I play it and I sing it all the time. And I was like, okay. But I think as well, it's understanding that like as a 4, you believe that you're like pretty unique on the planet, and like you need to feel like you're being appreciated. And I was like, oh, that's so meta. But similarly
there's only one of us on here with blue hair, so
it's so funny. And actually, because I do wealth dynamics in my business with a lot of my clients, well, with all of my clients, and one of the things, because I'm a creator profile in wealth dynamics, and they have this phrase in training where they say, creators think they're the best in the room. Stars know they are. And I was like, oh, it captures the angst of being a creator. But similarly with human design, I'm a generator, and everyone always goes, oh, you're a manifesting generator. And I'm like, no, I'm the regular kind. But it was the first line that I read. It said, you are a generator like 70% of the world's population. And I was like, how dare you? But I think as I've dug into human design more, and I still have like a way to go on that journey, to be honest, there are just little things where, you know, because it draws out a lot of quite unusual things on the profile information. But it was talking about hot food as a preference instead of cold food. And I was like, yeah, I hate sandwiches, which is pretty controversial for a Brit, actually.
Oh my gosh.
I always have hot lunch. And I was like, it's like, you know me, my goodness. So, but I think it's really interesting. I mean, obviously as well, I think a certain amount of personal work goes into these discoveries, because it's like, why every time? I mean, to be honest, when I found out that I was a creator of wealth dynamics, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty special. But I was so upset when I got those 2 results, which is not usual. But I was like, I think there is also some inner angst that is ready to be worked on and released. So I think the whole process, I mean, I'm not totally sold on like, let's all do every single test we can ever find. because I think that leads to quite a shallow level of introspection. But I do think that like we can learn valuable things about ourselves. And it's that moment where you get the resonance and you're like, yeah, I didn't actually know I was like that, but that is exactly how that feels, or that's exactly what I do in that situation. So yeah, I think for me, it's been like those two things, because I discovered my Enneagram and my human design around the same time. They've always been kind of linked to me. It's like they're kind of, they provide extra dimensions on each other.
I agree. And as an Enneagram 7 wing 8, I approve this message. And I also have to, I do have to contradict through my Enneagram 7 need for, exploring everything possible and never closing myself to any options and having total freedom as the thing that I'm seeking all the time in life. But I am a taker of all the different assessments. And I have found that what I see as a leader of a community of hundreds of women, and what I have seen as a leader, even in my marketing coaching business, was the more that we know, it's the whole know thyself. The more that I know about myself, the better leader I can be. And so for me, I have studied a lot of these pretty deeply, but I would say that the Enneagram is the one that I've studied the most and I've embodied the most, in combination actually with Myers-Briggs and with StrengthsFinder. But the human design world just kind of really opened itself to me recently. And now I feel like that's the path that I'm going to go on next. And I could be on this path for years because there's so many things. But these personality profiling, at least in my experience, what I've seen is those who take it and then don't go deep with it are the ones who are the naysayers. And they're like, it's just another test. Don't put me in a box. And those who actually take it and then study it and go deep with it and learn how to relate with yourself and the rest of the world are the ones who really find that these assessments can be life-changing and certainly business-changing. Yeah. So as Jess and I constantly cover this topic of going from, it's the 6 to 7 figure women podcast. So what we do and what I do in the Dames is all of my members are on that journey from 6 to 7 figures or from 7 to 8 figures. And we know, and we talk about this all the time in the Dames, that if we can understand what our Enneagram is and we can use that in the way that we lead our teams, we can use our human design in the way that we have relationships, we can dive deeper into these things and really understand each other, we're going to be better leaders of our companies. Jess, I know that you embody and use wealth dynamics, but also just in terms of, I think that we chose these two tools specifically because we're both geeked out about them. And the funny thing is, my ex-husband is the same human design as me, quote unquote. He's a splenic projector. He's not the same number, so that I understand a little bit better, but reading the map and being able to understand the energy centers and how certain wide open energy centers that I have may or may not have been significantly influenced by his closed, defined energy centers and paths. There's just so much that is fascinating about it. And me understanding that I'm a 7 and he was a 9 and we fight at 8 because we're both 8 wings. And it's just really opened up a world of self-awareness that has led to so much transformation for myself and those around me. So I love it. Love it.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Megan, because one of the greatest things is having our couples, because when they go through discovery, if they're married, they go through it together as a couple, is having the couples take the Enneagram, because a lot of times, I mean, if you could guess the 2 biggest numbers for a client base, what do you think they would be?
7s and 9s.
3s and 8s.
Oh, of course.
So
of course it would be activator.
3, the achiever
types.
And then 8, the challenger, which, they're trying to like map their own world and create their own worlds. They tend to have partners that are complementary to them. And so it's very important to understand. I just recently had a discovery meeting where she's an 8 and he's a 9. And I didn't even know he was a 9 yet. He wasn't on the first couple discovery calls. And she was expressing frustration that he didn't have the same eagerness to be an entrepreneur. He didn't want to control his own world. And as she was describing him to me, and I was like, has he ever taken his Enneagram? And she said, no. And I said, I'm willing to bet he's a 9. And 9s are fantastic task doers. They're fantastic worker bees. Like, you give them something, they're reliable, they can get it done, but you're going to waste a lot of time and energy trying to make a 9 and 8. That is just that's not who they
totally.
are. And there are a lot of marriages that can be helped through knowing where each other are coming from. And as you were saying about how nuanced the Enneagram is, I mean, there are triads, there are time orientations, there are 3 sublayers to each number, and those all have variations. Yep. And, you know, in 3s and 8s both fall in future time orientation. So 3s and 8s are always obsessed with thinking about the future. If you have a partner,
7s too.
7s too. Yeah. So those are all future oriented numbers. And if you have a partner who's in the present or the past, you know, that you should embrace the fact that they're pulling you back into the present, or they're like helping you reflect on the past. It's not all about the future. So really understanding and appreciating each other's redeeming qualities in addition to the flaws, which you're probably well aware of as a spouse, can be super, super helpful.
Yeah. And even then taking that into the, you know, the realm of being a leader and working with our teams, for me, the more I can know, the more you know about the Enneagram of my team, the more I know about their human design, the better leader I can be of them. And I can advocate for their specific style, their specific place where they live in the world, and the way that they self-express. And I think it's really important for leaders to get themselves educated in these areas. And when I'm running, for instance, our mastermind calls in the names, and I'm hearing about the problems that our leaders are facing, I'm always like, what was the last assessment you had your whole team do? And how have you empowered yourself as a leader to learn more about your team? Because really, I believe as women business owners, we're transforming the paradigm of business. And if we continue to do it without the awareness of who we are and who our counterparts are, we're just propagating what's been done for the last many centuries of it's my way or the highway. And that's BS in the world of a woman. Wouldn't you say, Jess?
Well, I was just going to say, if I could real quick, because Megan, it's interesting because when I hear you say both you and your ex-husband were splenic projectors, there's another reason why that creates, especially when you're looking at human design, a projector. And by the way, the energy that we're moving into in the next 3.5-ish years into this very individualized projector leadership energy, you're here to amplify the strengths and the gifts of the actual workers. And so when I look at 2 projectors together, first of all, you're both waiting for an invitation to actually be in a space. And oftentimes that can create a space where you don't know how to invite each other because you're both in that space of how your signature shows up. But the other thing is you have no one to actually activate that's a generator-ish energy, because projectors really do guide and lead the generators in the opportunity to be able to mine out their best assets and resources and gifts, because you have a propensity of being able to see the holistic puzzle before it's been built. You have a gift that us generators types will never be able to see. And I had to laugh, Jessica, when you said you threw a temper tantrum, because you get in that space, you're like, oh, it feels so, until you start to look at the nuances. Because as the Manny Gen and me, I was like, we are different. 33% of the population is a Manny Gen, which does have a functionality that's different than, and I know there's the truest in human design that'll be like, there's just the 4 types. And as a Manny Gen, I object that, because I resist that, because there's a very different nuance in how a manifesting generator shows up versus a generator. And so that 35%, right? And so I look at someone like Megan, who's here, she's here to really dig in and like mine in a very specific, connected to a very holistic picture in terms of how to put the right puzzle pieces together. And so when you have 2 projectors who are both splenic projectors, you're sort of competing in a way for the same leadership role. And you may not necessarily know how to do that right for each other, because again, it's that nuance of, I'm actually here to pull it out of this other area. So I'm not surprised to hear that's an X space.
Yep.
Because your role is to extrapolate and extract from those that you can sort of raise up to do the work.
Which is why I know that I'm in the right place as the leader of a community of women running 6, 7, and 8 figure businesses. Like
sure.
I'm in the absolute perfect place.
Yeah, makes total sense. And so I just hear that and I was like, of course. And then, you look at the competing sides on the Enneagram as well. That's just, and I have to laugh, Jess, as well, because aside from my 8-7 wing, my 4 is my very next prominent. And there's a lot of that energy. And so I was like, I kind of can feel that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess it's really like striking me in our conversation today, how much like human design and Enneagram, they help us understand ourselves and like our purpose, what we should be doing, but not just that, like the how. Like that's one of the things that's really struck me with human design. It's not just like you are this. It's like this is how you can be. But I think the other dimension to all of that is it's teaching us how to be with others. It's teaching us how to sort of show up in a way which is authentic to ourselves, but also takes account of the nuances, also like present in the room when we're with our teams, when we're with our families, when we're with our partners. I think it's a really, that to me feels very exciting because it's kind of, it's not this like introspective thing. And, I love introspection. It's great, but it's kind of like, how do we be in the world around other people to greater benefit and effect? And I think that is very powerful. Like you were saying, Megan, it's a very powerful difference in the way that we can show up as leaders compared to traditional business and being.
Yeah, and I think it does require I think you're thinking along these lines too, that it does require the introspection at first, and it requires us to really, and maybe that's because I am a projector and I'm built to look at all of these things and then only share the best things that I have discovered over my years. And even just having the awareness, I've known about the Enneagram probably more than and longer than other tests or other prototypes, whatever I'm trying to say. But as a 7, people used to look at me and be like, wow, you are a very high functioning business owner as a 7. How do you stay focused in that one area? And I say, well, because I do know that when I look around me at the other 7s, and I used to be a shiny object person, and I would get very distracted by things until I got into my purpose, which I was able to see when I wasn't in my purpose because I started getting bitter. And I know that from human design. And I also know that I get in a hedonistic behavior because I'm not on my path as an Enneagram 7. So there are the things that we learn about ourselves, but then our next step is choice. And how do we want to then integrate what we know about ourselves into what we're doing? And almost anytime people say to me, all right, I want to become a better leader, what should I do? I say, have you done any of these tests? And if you haven't, I would work with a coach to help you really not only take the test, but understand yourself and then start living from that space, because your leadership will almost immediately get better just by the fact that you understand yourself. And then if you can incorporate in assessments for the rest of your team. So I also want to look at wealth, because I do think that what Kaitlyn's doing and how looking at your personality and infusing that into your wealth plan, how does that become different for different people, Kaitlyn, just kind of like on a high level?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the demographic that we attract, which is primarily 3s and 8s, or we also have 7s with strong 8 wings. We have a couple 4s with strong 3 wings. And so these are entrepreneurs where at the end of onboarding, they're getting handed their financial freedom numbers, which is basically, this is what you stated to us. This is what it's going to take to get there. And so an achiever sees that as, let's do it, let's get it. And a challenger in 8 sees it as a challenge. So they really thrive in this this goal-oriented environment of, in order to achieve X, you have to do Y. So I think that has been really well received for every client that we have. None of my clients get to the end of onboarding and say, oh gosh, like, I just want to go home. This is scary. They're all like, let's do it. And I think that you have to have that type of personality. A lot of them are trying to achieve financial independence at a relatively young age. And I also think it's important because both of those personalities tend to fall into workaholism. And so if we can give them a number of, okay, if you are saving $10,000 a month or you're saving $120,000 a year, you are on track for meeting your goals. So what that means is you don't have to go out and grow a $10 million business just for the sake of growth. You would actually be fine running a $500,000 business. So it's up to you whether you want to do that or not. But to the weakness of a 3, which is vanity, why are you doing that? Are you doing that because it's helping you get closer to your goals? Or are you doing that because it looks good on Instagram? And those are the tough questions that we have to ask our clients. And there's a lot of, I don't know if we can swear on here, but
yes, you can.
Oh shoot moments. I don't know why I'm growing this business. I don't know why I'm doing this. And it's like, well, these are questions that you need to ask yourself so you don't get lost and you don't have kids coming to you 20 years from now like, hey, Mom, you were never around when I was a kid.
Yeah. At what cost are you doing these things for?
That
so
is
not
such an
only
important
like
question.
toward what motivator, but at what cost.
Yes.
And being aware of that.
Kaitlyn, what do the 4s do?
The 4s typically run marketing agencies, creative agencies, and surround themselves with good teams.
Do they get very like twisty and spirally though when they get their freedom plan and like, oh, I can never do that because the world is just against me? Or are they just like, I'm so super special? Of course they will.
4s are responsible. They everyone deals with scarcity mindset, I will say. We actually have Gabrielle Laura. We have her come in on a monthly basis to do a monthly mindset session with us. It's called the Reset and Recenter, because everyone's business goes through seasons of success and not so great times as well. And so it's also about, as a leader, like that internal balance. I mean, if you're leading a team, you can't be unhealthy. You can't be out of whack internally. And so, I would say 4s are responsible. I would say 4s sometimes fall into scarcity easier than a 3 or an 8. That's probably the biggest delineation.
That's interesting.
I would say.
And a quick pro tip for marketing, because that's my background. If you can use the Enneagram like Kaitlyn is and understand who your top clients are, you can reverse engineer looking at what the description is of a 3, a 7, or a 4, and then use that in your marketing to attract the right kinds of clients, because you will find their problems and their pains right there and what they're desiring right there. So moving over to human design, Candy, what were you going to say about this topic?
Well, it's interesting because this is why I love using Enneagram or understanding my Enneagram. I don't use it. I understand mine. And human design, because that is one of the things when you talk about everybody has scarcity mentality. So 2 pieces of that. One is you can actually directly map out where your shadows are and what stories you have around money. So for example, when I look at the gene keys, which is an extraction of human design, and I really look at my prosperity sequence, 3 of the 4 spheres in my prosperity sequence are all around the shadow of codependency. And it's codependency on a 2 line, which is through interpersonal relationships. It could be me and another person or me and an idea. And it's also on a 5 line. I have a 19.5 as well, which means I have codependency in some of the systems and structures I think I'm supposed to be dialed into. Not to mention, I have a undefined ego, which says I have a space of not knowing my own self-worth at times. And I'm constantly in a space where, as an 8, I think I got to prove something. I got to validate. And when you understand the difference in that, because my only gate that I have, for example, in my ego is a 21, which is about control. And when I'm aligned, my control says, I'm going to teach you how to fish, because I know that getting resources for the community and the tribe is everything that is important around my leadership. I'm a natural alpha. Again, the 8 line, I am a natural alpha. I have that channel. It is one of my strongest channels in my design, which means people are looking to me to lead them. I have to be asked, and those opportunities open up. But what will happen is, in a control that's healthy, I will create the resources, the pathways, the ways to teach them to fish. When, however, I get pulled out of that, either through the codependent cycles or things that is happening, my leadership shifts and I'm like, screw it. Y'all don't know what you're doing. I'm going to fish for you because I am tired of the fact that the community doesn't know how to get resources. And I'm just going to take it back and be like, everybody get out of my way. I'm just going to drive the shit. And I've watched patterns of that in my own leadership. Even in the last year where I kind of got taken out of some things, my family dynamics were hitting. So when you look at understanding, I think this is why I like both pieces together so much, because we all have our own money stories that you can very easily map out between your open and undefined centers, because all of that, to your point, Megan, especially as projectors, because you and Kaitlyn are both projectors, I believe, you have a lot of open areas more than likely because you're amplifying the energy of other people. And so one of the things that I caution my leaders around, because I attract a lot of projectors. So first of all, I attract a lot of 1-3 projectors, also 1-3 manifestors. And I saw that when we were chatting. I attract a lot of 6-2 manifesting generators and generators. I also attract a lot of 5-1s, 4-6s, and 2-4s. And I'm really clear, there's a reason. And so again, when you understand that, the other thing that human design does, and I've been able to do this thanks to a coach I worked with, you can map your human design to see your unique energetic coding and language. And it really shows up when you start looking at gene keys. There's language in each of your defined areas. And so that's why I said there's a unique leadership language you have that shows up that when you're using those words. And so I've redefined my marketing, I've redefined my copy to speak not only my natural coding that just attracts. I can't help but attract the right people to me when I'm speaking in my energetic codes. And when I understand the clients that I'm naturally bringing to me. So like the 1-3, for example, I know that the biggest duality that you face and the challenge in just your profile is the fact that a 1 has a propensity for perfectionism. And it can be a space that really creates analysis paralysis because you're all about crossing the T's, dotting the I's. You need to do research until there's no more research to do. You want to go deep and everything has to be just so. However, the 3 line, which is your design side, which is your unconscious, says, I need to fail. The only way I can learn is to fail. And your superpower is failure. Yet the 1 line says, I can't fail. Oh my God, it's got to be so perfect. And you're fighting yourself at times because you're like, it has to be just so. And I have to be a master of my domain. And I know this space. This is my lane. And the 3's like, but I want to play in the laboratory of life and I need to get messy. And the only way I can believe this is real is if I screw it up, I fail. And then I'm like, ooh, there's all the opportunities inside of it. And so I watch my 1-3s really struggle with being able to step into that space to own their leadership from that perspective, because that's one of the things I love most. And I fought at the beginning was the duality between your conscious line and your unconscious line. Like my conscious 6 is I'm a role model. I like to be extroverted. I'm out. My 2 line says, leave me the F alone. I'm a hermit. I don't want to talk to people.
Right.
And I literally vacillate from either I am one extreme, and also the 8 in me, I am one extreme or the other. I have no in between. There is zero space. I am either all about the people or I don't want a human for 3 days. And when I go dark, you can't find me.
I don't want to see another fucking
leader.
person.
No, like literally, absolutely not. And here's the thing. That's very different than somebody who's a 4 line, for example, who they're all about, and I always joke that like a 4 line, if we all had a mantra, theirs truly would be, what does the world need right now? Love, sweet love. Mm-hmm. They want to just be in community all the time and loving on people. And so you understand those dynamics and you can say, okay, this is where you're struggling. But then we get into those open centers, and I always caution, especially my projectors, my sweet, sweet, sweet projectors who are not here to work like generators at all, is that you have got to have a way, especially if you have an open solar plexus and an open root, you've got to find ways to discharge that every evening before you go to sleep, because otherwise you were taking on the pressure of the generators and me, my biggest defined area is my root. So if you're around me too long, I'm a do, and you're taking that energy and absorbing it. And if you have an open emotional center or an undefined emotional center, you are oftentimes in other people's circuses trying to wrangle their monkeys. And so my biggest thing to my projectors is not your circus, not your monkeys. And oh my God, you got to discharge the pressure and the emotional buildup. Otherwise, you cannot lead in the capacity, because projectors have a really, gorgeous leadership style.
Yep.
That is not what we've been used to since 1615, and this energy that we're currently in universally.
Yeah.
We are moving more towards the projector leadership coming through. And so I need my projectors to be healthy, to lead in the way that they're here to lead. And most of them are burnt out.
Which is all about rest. And Jess, I'd love for us to kind of go into what's one thing that we want to take away from this conversation that people can get in touch with us about, because I think, that's one of our purposes for the 6 to 7 Figure Women podcast. So if you had to say, Candy and Kaitlyn and me and Jess, what is one thing that you want people to know about you that you do in your work? I know that we all do a lot of different things, but what's one thing that you want people to know, and where can they find you to get a hold of that information? And then we'll see if we have more time after that for other things, but I want to make sure that we get this in. So Kaitlyn, how about you? What's one thing you want? For us, my first question was, can clients anywhere in the US work with you, or do they have to be in certain states? That's my first question.
Great question. So right now, anyone in the US can work with us. They do not need to have any assets whatsoever. They could have $0. We are there to hold their hand, to teach them how to start creating wealth today. So it's all about their potential versus what they currently have, which is very different than the typical wealth management model. And I would say too, the perfectionism thing with the 1-3 line, that's been hard because my background is in private wealth management. And so I was very particular about bringing all of the strategy and capabilities that I was delivering to billionaires to the small business owner. So we have a very high bar in terms of the service and strategy that we deliver. But I think we do it, to my wing, in a very nurturing way, where we try to eliminate shame and make it a very safe space for people, because money is highly emotionally charged. And it's all about what we can do today and tomorrow, not what happened in the past.
And where should people go to find more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you visit our website, theoryplanning.com, which is down here in my title, there's a link to book a call with me at the bottom. And I encourage anyone to hop on a call. I would be happy to chat with you and see if we're the right fit.
Awesome. Candy.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I do is I do what I call an activation container. And so I have refined a framework that I used ever in my corporate days that helps people get really clear on their strategy for their life, for their business. And it's called a dream framework. So it's all about your desires, your rocks, your essentials, your approach, and your milestones. But what's been interesting over the last couple of years is I still use that framework, but now I overlay. Like I said, every one-on-one client that works with me goes through their human design. And so what we do is we bring both the feminine and masculine way to approach creating a strategy so that we can understand your unique energetic blueprint and how that overlays into what you say is most important and what you're going to do. And so inside of that, activating the energetic code, your specific language. And so in that container, that activation container, you're getting an actual structured framework that maps out. It basically clears the deck to set your GPS and map out the path you want to take. And then we overlay the stuff that's really juicy that allows you to you uniquely figure out what's the energy, what's the fuel you need to put into that car that's going to be driving along that path, because you could have the same quote strategy as someone else, but the way you approach it is going to be very different. And so I do that in some pretty rapid, again, as the manifesting generator, we do that in a rather quick activation, and then you can do ongoing work from there.
Beautiful. And they can find that at candybarone.com. Barone or Barone?
Barone. Or just email me directly, candybarone@gmail.com, to talk about that. But yes, that's on there as well.
Awesome. Jessica, what about you?
Yeah, so I work with women consultants and thought leaders around mindset and strategy. And increasingly, my work involves engaging with your emotions and exploring some of the root causes of the blocks that we get. Like, it can feel very simple with strategy, like just do the thing, get to 7 figures, everyone is happy, hooray. There are so many little steps on that journey. And so a really important part of the work that I do with my clients, helping them to understand themselves more fully, helping them to identify what emotions are coming up day in and day out, because the story of our businesses so often plays out in like the emotions that we can tolerate, the ones that we can't. But yeah, my company is called 7 Figure Consultant. If you want to be a 7 figure consultant or thought leader, come to jessicafenny.com and book in for a call with me. I would love to talk to you about how I can help you take your business to the 7 or 8 figure destination that you have in mind for it.
Awesome. Beautiful. And I'm Megan Contra, the founder of The Dames, and we are an organization that is the incubator for the greatness of women running and leading 6, 7, and 8 figure businesses. And what we really do differently in our organization, which is global with members around the world, is we bring together this space where it's created as an ecosystem for the needs, wants, and desires of these women who are catalyzing into that next big jump. And we provide education, we provide a lot of fun, we provide that community connection support, and most importantly, we provide instant problem solving for their needs, which we have through our mastermind calls. And it is truly a community that was created based on my knowledge of myself, based on my knowledge of the world, and based on what I see we need as women business owners to be able to transform the paradigm of business. And so you can visit thedames.co. And if you are a woman who is running a business that is interested in us, you can always check out thedames.co/roundtable. So I would love to, Jess, if you're cool with the last question being like a piece of wisdom that we can all share.
I was thinking that actually, yes.
Awesome. So what's one piece of wisdom that you'd leave everyone with that will really help them grow their wealth or their leadership? And whoever wants to go first, Kaitlyn or Candy?
Oh, Candy, you go first. I might need a second.
I'll probably share. I usually share this piece of wisdom. For me, it really, especially as we're redefining leadership, it's understanding that leadership is ultimately a choice. It is not a function of title, rank. It's not a function of somebody giving you permission. We all have a unique path we are on, regardless of if it sort of looks like somebody else's. But leadership is a choice, and knowing that you can lead from wherever you're at, where you're at, with what you have in that moment. And so the opportunity is stop waiting to lean in and lead. And when I talk about leadership, it is a function of 3 things. It is a function of how you choose to show up, how you choose to serve others, and how you choose to take personal responsibility inside that space. And so, like I said at the beginning, leadership is it's everyone's opportunity. It is everyone's responsibility. And the only way you can show up from a leadership position with others is by leading yourself first. And so if I could offer anything, it's what do you need to do right now to lead yourself in a way that's going to be the next evolution or elevation of who you are. And so that would be what I would leave.
Yes. Self-responsibility.
Yeah, we are feeling that.
We need a lot of that right now. Self-responsibility and accountability for sure. And we need to stop thinking it's somebody else's job to do it. Everybody needs to be leading right now.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. And my piece of advice would be when it comes to investing and creating wealth, nothing can replace time. Time is your greatest asset when it comes to investing. And so that's why I encourage everyone to take action now, because it's very easy to put off. But the wealthiest people I've ever met, it's just come down to habits, saving habits, the habits that go into running a successful business. It's the day-to-day inputs that lead to those phenomenal outputs. So take action now would be my piece of wisdom.
Yes. And I absolutely love, just to say this, Kaitlyn, that you create that container and that space for those who don't have 250,000 to 5 million assets under management to be able to work with you. Like that is the number one barrier to what you just said, which is time. Is, most of us can't work with a lot of the different professionals out there. So thank you for thank you for that. And especially creating that space for business owners. And Candy, I just wanted to say, going to your website, first of all, I love your use of the word fuck. That's just
all the time
resonant with my vibe.
Two eights right there.
Yep. And
it is absolutely my love language to say fuck in every capacity I possibly can.
Yep, absolutely. And we will attract and deflect certain people based on that. And I'm very happy with that.
Same.
And just the other thing that you have is the ideal calendar system that I saw on your website, and activating your soul blueprint. I just feel like those are things that you've obviously found out are deal breakers for your clients. And so when people create offerings based on the knowledge of the deep knowledge of their clients, brava, that's what I have to say. So
thank you. Thank you. Yes. And I would say, Megan, that's the whole, I have a podcast called Aligned as Fuck. And that's the whole premise is, look, if I'm going to offend you, you need to just walk away now, because I'm going to tell you the rawness of me is there's probably going to be an F-bomb drop every third word. Because I do feel like that's a lot of what limits people, is too much space. So you call your people to you when you speak your lange.
Yep. Especially as women, we're worried about being too much. That's one of the number one things we're worried about. And if we could just get rid of that shit, we'd be a lot better.
Hey, fucking men.
Yes. Hey, fucking men. Jess, what's one piece of wisdom you want to leave everyone with?
I think, well, firstly, I have just super enjoyed our conversation today. I knew that it was going to be a good one, but the richness and the depth of insight and understanding, Candy and Kaitlyn, it's just been an absolute, of course, Megan, you as well. It's just been a real privilege and a joy to be in this room. I feel like the one piece of wisdom, I guess I would say, is be on a journey, show curiosity. A lot of entrepreneurs, that's how we got ourselves in this mess in the first place. We're just so damn curious. It's I gotta know, what do I do next? But committing to that journey for the long haul, there are people who start out who do not keep going. They don't have the perseverance. They lose patience with it. But I think just getting super curious and almost to the point of obsession about how we communicate with other people and how we can show up in the world to have impact and to enable others to have impact. For me, it has just been a complete life-changing thing. I am not the same person age 40 as I was age 31 when I first started my business. So I guess it's just that curiosity, that desire to serve, to make an impact in the world for the benefit of other people. To me, I think that's it's like a North Star that I think all of us can just really hold on to.
Yes.
So beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And Jess, I think that for some reason this is coming through because of what you were saying about being a 4. And I think that along with what you said, there's also let your journey be unique to you. And there is no one path.
Yeah.
There is no right path. There is no, and if you allow yourself to really follow your own internal guidance system, that you calibrate and recalibrate as you evolve as a leader and as a wealth manifester, wealth. I don't want to say accumulator, but yes, accumulator. Let's say it.
Or creator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, creator. Mm-hmm. That is the beauty of life. And so I think we've done a great job today giving a little bit of insight. But there's one other thing that I just want to say is we spent some time looking at the awareness of the things that are the defaults, but we also spent the time looking at the things that are the tools. So when you're empowered by understanding, okay, these are the defaults of the 7, these are the defaults of the projector, these are the defaults of the different lines. And here's what you can do to really live your unique path and your unique plan in such a beautiful way. That has just been such a fun part of this conversation for me to really feel into that and get to be in that space. So thank you all for this. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Megan. Thanks for having us. Jessica.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. This was awesome.
Well, on to next time for the 6 to 7 Figure Woman podcast.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, everyone. We hope that you've enjoyed it, and we will see you again next month. I can say that because it's in the diary, it's happening.
Yes.
We'll see you again next month for another episode.